Welcome back to the PhotoCEO podcast, where hosts Megan Mondrell and Frederica Gullickson teach you how to build your photo business by listening to your intuition, taking empowered action, and embodying the PhotoCEO mindset. Welcome back to another episode. We're going to chat a little bit about some mental health aspects in regards to running a small business, as when we're recording this episode, Bell Let's Talk Day is just around the corner. And especially this year with the pandemic, we think that loneliness is a topic to definitely touch on. So, Ricky, I just want to ask you, how did you first realize that you were feeling loneliness opposed to another feeling? Because I feel like a lot of small business owners are going from a state of having a huge community at work to all of a sudden having next to nobody. And I think that sometimes those feelings can get muddled with resentment for what you're doing or something else. So how did you identify it as loneliness?
For sure. And I think I'm just going to take a step back for a second. And like even pre-pandemic, when you go from like being in a job environment where you're working with multiple different people, and then you switch into being a full-time business owner, or even if you're not full-time, but you've made that leap into trying to be full-time and that's your main focus, you don't realize that you're giving up a huge aspect of, social time with other people to be, trying to run a business and build a business all on your own in your house in the quiet. And there's a lot of things that are really good about doing something like that. But I know for myself, the loneliness side of it actually was a bit of a surprise. I'm surprised that I didn't think about it because I would consider myself self-aware. And so I think that leads into like when I started feeling lonely and started, like you said, kind of feeling a little bit resentful towards like what I was doing in my business. It was the self-awareness like piece of myself that kind of was able to figure out that it was loneliness and that there was kind of a way to counteract it in a sense.
That's awesome. And when do you find that you feel most lonely? Is there a certain time of day or a certain task that you do that just really reminds you just how lonely being a small business owner can be?
Yeah, well, especially being, I guess for any small business owner, but especially like as my experience as a photographer, the time that I would like feel the loneliness was when I had a new really good idea that I just wish I had somebody to like bounce that idea off of, that I trusted, and that I could speak to openly about it without them, harboring any judgment or criticisms. Not that those aren't also useful, but I find that you have to kind of be careful about who you tell your, not just your, I wouldn't call them secrets, but like you're sharing a vulnerable piece of yourself when you're sharing a new idea, and to have somebody that you can like trust to talk to about those things, and bounce ideas back and forth off of is really important. And so that is, I think, probably one of the most challenging pieces of being a solopreneur, I guess, or a photographer, is that you're kind of on your own in that regard, unless you do have like a trusted person who's also in the business, can kind of like talk to you with, if that makes any sense.
And, that was actually a very profound answer. I was expecting you to say when I'm alone in my room editing or something like that. But I think that
That's
a lot
the
of
easy
people,
part.
right. I think that a lot of people will definitely resonate with that. And especially the piece where sometimes people just don't have trust that even a friend in the industry won't then turn to compete against them with a good idea, which is a sad reality, but it is true. But I am curious to know what helps you combat that loneliness. And you can also separate the two between pre-pandemic and post-pandemic if you have used different things to kind of combat that feeling.
For sure. I think in general, I have taught myself to, if I have an idea, for example, let's go back to that. If I have a new idea that I want to maybe implement in my business, if I don't have a photographer friend that I can talk to and trust and feel feel secure around when I'm sharing a new thing, then I've decided to like go outside of the business and talk to maybe a friend about something. And because like even if they're not in the industry, they can still be a sounding board and like bounce ideas back to you about like, okay, what about this? Or I can see a problem maybe coming up on this part of the idea or something like that. And then I guess the other piece of like combating loneliness in this business is just really having, I mean, pre-pandemic, having like a community around you that you can step away from your computer and like make intentional time to go and spend time with your like friends or family that you really enjoy being around. But I guess post-pandemic, it's for me been really, I've been really heavy into like the self-care. So like rather than doing like a big self-care day once every few months, I do little things every day that help me kind of combat the effect of sitting at my desk all day by myself. So that would maybe be like going and taking my dog for a walk every day, and just spending time outside because we are able to do that. I know that in some crowded places like downtown and city centers, it's a little bit more challenging. But luckily, where I am, I'm still in a small city, but I'm able to walk outside without having to like wear a mask, and I can take my dog for a walk. I also really like going for like little short drives to just kind of get out of the house and listen to an audiobook or a podcast. And I have also found too that I have been taking a lot of showers recently and just like letting the, like letting the warm water like fall over you and just like kind of cleanse you a little bit, like not just in terms of your body, but in terms of your mind and your soul.
Mhm.
Um, and just doing something like intentionally bringing humor into my day every day is huge, right? So
Yeah.
whether that's like a funny meme or a funny like movie or something or a funny book, like humor is a huge piece of like maintaining that mental health side of things even when you are by yourself still.
Yeah, I think that there's a big I wanted to highlight the word intentional because I think that you can be good company for yourself. Obviously, I'm a huge people person. I love hugs. And so it has been hard being a little bit restricted as far as that goes. But I think that a lot of people aren't intentional about spending time with themselves. And therefore, it takes away that best friend in yourself where it's just passing time instead of spending time with yourself where
Mm-hmm.
you could be taking a shower but not really I don't know, not really I don't know if enjoying it is the right word, but
Or just
not
like being
being
present maybe.
exactly being present with it. And same thing with when you're mentioning having intentional fun in your day as far as a funny movie. You're watching that movie because you are wanting to be present with that enjoyment instead of it just being like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to put another movie. I have time to waste, right? And so well, there's obviously lots of different situations that everyone is in. I think that there's something to be said for that self care aspect while it's still being very intentional and present.
For sure. And the self-awareness too, I is super key. Like if you I think that's the first part of it, right? Like if you're not aware that you're feeling lonely, it's going to show up in different ways to kind of like and you're going to maybe be confused by that. So if you're getting frustrated or angry or self-critical or self-judging, I think those are all really like key indicators that you are feeling lonely and then that's the root cause. And when you understand that that's the root cause, you can kind of move in the direction of like helping yourself through that,
Mm-hmm.
and making the choice to do that because not everybody, like even if they do recognize it, it's about making the choice to actually go in the opposite direction and try to help yourself, because at the end of the day, that's all you're going to have anyway. Like you only have yourself to take care of you for the most part, and um, it really would be a shame to miss out on that opportunity to, like you said, really get to know yourself and become your own best friend, especially in pandemic times when a lot of us are alone or we are only with people within our household. So um, there's a huge opportunity there, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to really get to know yourself and to get to know, what you like or what you don't like or how you want to improve on certain things or where you want to grow. and really give yourself that time to dig into those deeper meanings and just have more depth in your life, um, that can also be really fulfilling and combat that loneliness as well.
Exactly. I know this is kind of a cliche example, but I think that so many people are so amazing at taking care of plants. I am not gifted with that, but I
I'm
think that
not
it's
either.
important, right? It's important to almost think of yourself like a plant. People will realize when they have, I think they're called burnt leaves, when just the edges turn brown, and they'll know how to care for that plant based on what different, I guess, species it is. And we have to remember that we're just like complicated houseplants. That's such an overdone saying, but it's so true. We need to be feeding ourselves as far as like what knowledge really makes us happy, what nutrition really makes us happy. We need to be outside enjoying the fresh air if possible or the sunshine and watering ourselves, like just taking care of ourselves. And that does require an aspect of knowing yourself and what really makes you tick, but it's through those aspects that really allow you to flourish, even in a time of hardship or loneliness.
Hmm. And I also want to bring up too, like I just had a recent experience where I was having a hard mental health day, and I have in the past have like found myself really being resistant to that because I'm the type of person who's always like, hey, what can I learn? What can I do to grow? Blah, blah, blah. How can I stay positive? Well, there's also by doing that, it can also lead to resistance in your body, which makes that feeling that you're experiencing like loneliness that much stronger. And
Yeah.
so the other day when I was kind of moving through that, I was like, okay, what, like I still ask myself, what can I learn here? And the thing that I had to learn that day was that it was okay to just put the armor down for a day and to really be okay with it just being a hard day, and to, you know, see, I could still see the beauty in that. And I had texted my one of my best friends who is going through cancer right now, and I said to her, because she was also kind of at a bit of a low point and having a hard time, and I sent her these two videos. I had gone to the ocean um, back to back. So I was there in the evening and then there right in the morning the next day for a photo shoot. And the night before, it was storming, and it was like the sky was just this crazy mix of like heavy blue cloud, but also had like pink and yellow and orange somehow mixed into it still. And the waves that were kind of coming in and crashing onto the beach were larger waves than normal. And it was so beautiful that I had to like get out of my car in the storm and just kind of go stand on the beach to like really take it in.
Yeah.
And the next day I went back and it was just quiet. Like it was the most beautiful sunrise. And the water was just slowly kind of like lapping onto the edge of the beach there. And I was like, oh my gosh, like going through something difficult can be just as beautiful as going through something that's really peaceful. And it's just a matter of choosing to see it that way. So even though I had decided like to reduce the resistance in my body, that I needed to just accept that it was going to be a hard day and just move slowly and, you know, understand that that's okay too. This is all part of life. There is still beauty in that. And I can tell you, like, as soon as I decided to just let myself feel it instead of resisting it and think like, oh, I need to do all these self-care things to make myself feel better, it actually lessened. Like
Yeah.
the hard thoughts that were going through my head that day lessened, and it I think it was because the resistance, you know, stopped. And there's something to that too, of like when you need to put the armor down and just feel the harder feelings, that's okay too.
Yeah. And I really like and want to highlight how you said through and move, because when you have those feelings, it's not like you're sitting in it for days and days and days. It is, I think it's necessary to feel those things and to reflect on those things. It's not something to push aside, but it's also something that you move through. And it's okay to move slowly, but it's something that like it's a valley. It's not like you're going to sit there forever, right?
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah.
again, that goes back to that intentional choice,
Yeah.
right? And I do think that as humans, we have the ability to have conscious choice more than we give ourselves credit for and take responsibility for.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, that's not going to be the same, for everybody. Like there's different mental health challenges that are going to affect people differently and
Mm-hmm.
affect how they do make decisions or choose their life. But I think for the majority of us, or for many of us, we do have that choice, and it's just a matter of tapping into it and taking responsibility, and also just being gentle with ourselves too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Do you have any other things to add in regards to loneliness? I've really been enjoying hearing your input and your experiences with it and how you've overcome it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, even though in some cases it takes time to meet people who are in your industry that you can really become friends with, it's important to keep trying and to keep putting yourself out there until you find one or two people who you really connect with, um, in the industry specifically, so that you have that topic to really talk about and to support each other through in terms of being photo business owners. Um, and it's just nice to have somebody there who knows what you're going through and what you're struggling with, and they can relate because they are going through the same thing usually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you have that together, you kind of make each other stronger. And I think that you and I have experienced that as well, like in our coffee conversations and whatnot. If either of us is having an issue in our business, we're like, hey, can you just chat with me for a second about this?
Yeah.
And by the end of it, you just feel so much lighter, right?
Yeah, I think it gives the opportunity for the other person to normalize your struggle and validate it, but also help pick you up and move you through it.
For sure.
Because, yeah, no one should ever make you feel that what you're going through isn't normal. And I think that sometimes that can happen when we talk to non industry friends. They just sometimes don't get it, and that's not necessarily their fault. It is understandable, but I think that having that industry friend really helps you. Um, it helps take a little bit of the weight off for sure.
For sure. And like you said, normalizes things that you may be being hard on yourself for. If you
Yeah.
think that, things should be different, it's like, well, no, I'm going through this too. Thanks for
Yeah.
bringing it up, you know?
Yes.
So yeah. Is there anything that you wanted to add about it, like if you have ever experienced loneliness, or how you like to move through tougher challenges or tougher days in your business?
Yeah. I think that I don't think that I have so much experienced that sense of loneliness in my business. I am blessed to have a team that I can always turn to and chat with. But I think when it comes to having those harder days, I think you nailed it. Just being able to have someone to talk to, and really doing lots of self reflecting helps me. I'm a very reflective person, and I like to not overthink, but just reflect on what things caused me to get to that point. Like, was I overworking myself? Was I not doing those little upkeep self care things? And I just allow myself to kind of have a relaxed day, a day to just lie down, maybe take a nap and watch a show.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. And it goes back to that whole idea of being gentle with yourself and
Yeah.
being self-aware that that you need to take that time. Yeah. Um, has there ever been any challenge in terms of loneliness as you are the leader in your company? Like, I know that sometimes business owners who are like the CEO of their business in a small business, or the leader of their photo teams, they kind of have that little bit of separation between and boundary between, um, not really employer, but like, that relationship between like employer to employee. There's
Yeah.
that boundary that you can't really cross. And so there's just certain things that you don't talk to your team about, or let them know what's going on. So has there been anything like that for you?
There definitely has been things where, yeah, like no nos that you can't really talk about with people on your team. Some examples of that being like issues with a team member you can't talk to another team member about. I just feel like that's definitely a no. But I think that I'm definitely lucky to have the parents that I do have who share my apt for communication with people and for having that like business mindset. Even though they don't have businesses, I feel like they have that very like calm, self-developed presence. So while I most of the time don't get the answer that I want from them when I talk to them, and they don't understand the industry, they're always a little bit of a good sounding board when I do have issues. And so as well as my boyfriend is always good to chat to. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think that I'm lucky in the sense that I haven't dealt with too many issues with loneliness. I think that I'm just a little bit too chatty in the sense that I'm always talking to someone on social media and always talking to people via video chats as well. So those would be
Mm-hmm.
my, I guess, suggestions. Not that you can always talk about business related things, but just to keep that sense of community that you would have in a workplace.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's in terms of Bell Let's Talk, like I think their whole message is to like, if you need to reach out to someone to chat, please do it, because
Yep.
there are people in your life that do want to help you, and that can, even if they don't necessarily need to offer advice, they can just be a sounding board. So if you need to chat or even to just spend quiet time with, it's important to reach out and try to connect with people so that you can have a bit of an easier time if you're going through something difficult.
And I think that that's also the same for in business. I know that for 2020, there were lots of very difficult business related things as far as cancellations and reschedules and stresses around legalities of that kind of thing. And I think that it is important to know that there are people in your industry that you maybe haven't met yet that are in those groups that will be willing to help you. And it might be hard to find those people, but I know for me, you're welcome to contact me with any issues as far as COVID rescheduling and those kind of scary things that I think can really cause huge down spirals for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. That would be great. And that's such a generous offer to let people know that they can contact you if they have questions regarding COVID regulations and like what to expect or how to move through something.
Yep.
I think that um, I think that it's also important too that if you're in the type of position where you aren't struggling as much as other people, perhaps you have friends or family around you who might be struggling a little bit more. And it's just a simple, like, send a text or a quick phone call to just check on the people in your lives
Yeah.
to make sure that, you're staying connected and that they know that they aren't alone. Especially those people who, have been going through the pandemic and have been living alone. Or who have been in tough situations like with their families or with their partners. It's always good to just like be that friend who, checks in with other people. And to just, even if you don't have a long conversation, just to let them know that you're there if you ever need to talk or go for a, socially distanced walk or something like that. So thank you, Megan, for this discussion. I think that it was a really good one for us to talk about mental health, especially in relation to, what photographers might be going through as solopreneurs in their own businesses. We will see you next week on another episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of the PhotoCEO podcast with your hosts, Frederica and Megan. We hope you enjoyed your deep dive into these tips and tricks on how to transform from photographer to PhotoCEO. If you liked this episode, we do have a personal request. We want to continue helping more photographers like you, so we'd love if you could leave us a 5-star review. This helps us reach more people, which means we can continue bringing you helpful content every week that helps you in your photo business. If you have any questions or would like to suggest a topic for the podcast, reach out to us by direct messaging us on Instagram at photobusinessdesign or by sending us an email to hello@photobusinessdesign.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope that you have another great week in your photo business.